before I forget. Okay. So, yeah, so how's it going? I haven't seen you guys in a few days. How's the week been going? Any interesting stories this week?
It's been it's been fine. Last night my friend made the decision that she wanted to dye her hair red, so I did that for her, and that's pretty much the most interesting thing that's happened this week.
Well, I would say that that's genuinely interesting. So I'm happy to hear you having an interesting time. How does she look with red hair?
It actually I didn't get to see it because I had to leave because it was, like, late and I didn't wanna. Because Ubers have been, like, very weird because of the snow and the ice.
Yeah.
So, she sent me a picture though, it looks really good.
Okay. Now, are we talking like bright red, like the color of this book kind of red? Or are we talking like red hair kind of red?
Well, it's more like she had dark, like, brown hair under it, so
Yeah,
it's more like a red tint.
red
Like,
tint. Okay.
yeah, you can see it in the sun especially, but you can also see it, like, under normal light. It just, like it's not like a bright red because she didn't bleach her hair beforehand.
Right. Okay. So it's a little subtle, but I'm sure, noticeable. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've dyed my hair before. I used to be kind of into punk rock back in a previous life. And so I'd be going to punk rock shows and dyeing my hair and that sort of thing. Back in when I was like in high school, and then I kind of what to say, I kind of grew out of it. Although I think punk rock is still in the background of my mind somewhere. The what to say, sort of contrarian part of me maybe. But yeah, I would not dye my hair anymore. I'm kind of happy with the way it looks now. Although it is poofy today. I don't know if you guys could tell. I took a shower last night and woke up this morning just poofing all over the place. So hair will never do what you want it to do, I suppose. All right, well, let's get started. Enough about hair. So we left off last time with the life of the Buddha. He was just born, right? And we spent class talking about his spectacular birth, and we compared it to the Hollywood depiction in the Little Buddha film. And I thought we actually had a really nice conversation, right? Comparing the two stories and kind of thinking about subtle differences and why those differences matter. And I think we came up with a pretty good case for the different ways to tell this story, the different pieces to emphasize. And so we can kind of continue that line of discussion today. I'll have a few more clips for you. We won't quite do the same exercise, of course, but we can still compare, even if that's not the main point of the exercise. What we did not do last time is we kind of ran out of time, so we couldn't quite go over all the details of the book. And frankly, we can't. There are too many details, right? So we won't be able to go over all the details of the book. And of course, that comes back to you. And I guess this is something I was thinking I should bring to your attention. Oh yeah, I also saw this. Did you guys know that today is kind of a special day? There are fireworks on Google. Look at that. If you look up Lunar New Year, there are fireworks. I don't know if that always happens when you look up Lunar New Year, but yeah, in China right now, it's nighttime on the 11th. And so a lot of people are blowing up Chinese social media with Happy New Year greetings. So it's technically tomorrow is the New Year, but I guess tonight would be New Year's Eve. So, that's sort of party time. So, anyways, the Lunar New Year is coming. Were you guys aware of that? Oh, trying to type it. Lunar New Year. Anybody? No, not really.
I do.
So, was Adam about to say something? Adam, do you know about the Lunar New Year?
Yeah, I know about it.
You know about it. All right, good. What do you know about it?
Not that much. Just know the date. And be honest with you, just know that
Okay,
when I was in middle school, high school, they used to bring it up a lot.
good. Yeah, it's an important day, right? And one reason it's called Lunar New Year versus Chinese New Year. Of course, the Lunar New Year is celebrated in China, but it's not only in China, right? And so, um, in Vietnam, in Korea, and it used to be in Japan. I'm pretty sure, actually, somebody's asking about this here. I'm pretty sure it's not really celebrated in Japan now. There are some areas in Japan that still celebrate it, but yeah, it's not as popular in Japan. So basically, in sort of the East Asian sphere, Japan is a little bit of an exception here, but most countries, at the very least, acknowledge it, if not celebrate it outright. And so I think I've told you guys I study Tibetan Buddhism. They call it Losar, so it's the Tibetan New Year also. So yeah, it's a very exciting time, and of course, the reason it's called Lunar New Year is it's matched up with the new moon, right? So there's a new moon, and so with this new moon is a new year. That's the way it's presented. And also, it's the beginning of spring, and so I know it feels a little early to be talking about spring. The seasons are about half off, so the middle of the Chinese spring is the beginning of our spring, is the equinox. And so there's a sense like, the birds are chirping outside, even though there's snow on the ground, things are starting to get warmer. And it's celebrating that change too. Oh, it disappeared. Come back. I've got two screens going and I put it on the other screen. Okay. So here's where we're at. I wanted to bring this to your attention just so we're kind of on the same page. Here's where we're at. We're reading Chugyal, Life of the Buddha. I gave you the reading for last time. I didn't give it for this time because you got to have a copy, as I've said a million times now. So if you don't have a copy, get one. Again, reading for today, I did not give to you on PDF, so you got to get the book. Next week we'll keep reading. Following week we'll finish the book. It's only 100 pages, and then we'll have an exam, right? So as we're kind of slowly going forward, it might feel like, there are no like reading quizzes in this class. I'm not gonna be really on you to make sure that you're doing the reading every time. A lot of it comes down to trust. I trust you guys. A lot of you are upperclassmen. You've done this before. You know what it means to be a college student. It's on you. And when this exam comes, that is when I test that trust, right? So if you have not done any of the reading and if you've not really been paying attention in class, you're going to be in trouble on the exam. So this is my warning to please stay on top of things, right? And of course, if you have questions about how to do that, I'm here, happy to talk. If you're reading this, you're not really getting it, again, I'm here, happy to talk, office hours, whatever. And the slides are here for you, right? If you're thinking about doing some review, just open up the slides, you can go through, find what we've talked about before. These are what I think are the most important parts of the book, right? I post them before class if you want to take notes on them. And obviously, if I'm making the exam, these are the kinds of things that show up on the exam. So that is how I would study for this, is using the slide. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because I realized, I don't know if that was totally explicit, but yeah, exam is on the way. It's going to be on this book. This book is going to be really central for the exam as well as the other reading. So any questions about all that stuff? Lunar New Year, exams, anything else? We're good? Okay, so that's my reminder, I guess we could call it. And so as we kind of link up to class from last time, we started with the birth and we talked about how the birth was kind of remarkable and, let's say, abnormal, kind of special. We talked about the role of these gods, right? And how they didn't really show up in the Hollywood version. Maybe I can start with a question. So what was special about the birth of the Buddha?
What was special is that when he was born and was able to walk, and like as he walked, not only like lotuses came up under his feet,
Yeah,
and it's believed that he was able, like he came out fully clothed.
yeah,
And according to the book, he came out from her side, but
right.
that's different in the movie.
Yeah. So we can zoom in on this. And in fact, I have another image. We already looked at this one. Why don't we look at a new one? Here's another image of a little Buddha popping out of mom's side. You can see that, right? And so, yeah, very good, Sydney. So The lotus flowers were in the movie, right? Hopefully you have this image of the little baby walking along and lotus flowers springing up everywhere he walks. He talked. He said, I've been born to free beings from suffering, that sort of thing. That was also in the book, right? Here's mom holding onto the tree. So this should be a pretty familiar image. These guys, who are these guys who are catching the baby and helping her out?
Are those the two gods that were there with her at the time?
Yeah, these are the gods, right? And this is that area of northwestern, was really Pakistan now, called Gandhara. And maybe you can tell they look kind of Greek. They've got sort of the Greek nose thing going on. Their hair looks kind of Greek. They've got the same sort of toga robe look going on here. So like I said before, Greek aesthetics enter into early depictions of the Buddha. And here's another example of it, right? Is the Buddha being born from his mother's side. So hopefully that's all pretty clear. We've got a very special little baby being born. And an interesting comparison too is Jesus, right? Jesus was also, he had a kind of a special birth. It's not the same, right? He wasn't born from his mother's side or something like that, but there are definitely some parallels that are worth thinking about too. So what gets left out? If we think about this Buddha, his final life, if we think about this as his final life, obviously the story does not begin there, at least not in the version that we're reading, right? The story begins lifetimes ago. Really, I mean, if we want to be really strict about this, it begins with this discussion of different eras. Did you notice that? Era of darkness, era of light. In the era of light, a Buddha appears. Era of darkness, no Buddha appears. So it starts with like the beginning of the universe, right? So when we're telling the life story of the Buddha, we got to begin with everything, right? So it's pretty ambitious story. I think if I were going to tell a life story of the Buddha, I wouldn't quite go that far back. But at the same time, we get a bunch of his different lives. We get this impression that he lived many different lives. And as we said last time, the life before this one, he was up in heaven. And so we did not talk about this vow yet, did we? I don't think we got to it. So why don't we check it out? How about this? Just again, it's kind of early just to get the wheels turning. Who would like to read this for us? And again, I pay attention to who participates, and this is pretty low-hanging fruit as far as participation comes. I encourage you to get your books out if they're not out already, so you can read along. It's on page 10. But even if you don't have your book out, you can just read from the slide. So who would like to participate, please?
I can.
Okay, please. Was that Catherine?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
Pity this world has no one to guide it. It has no one to protect it, no place to go for refuge. I will save those who are not saved, who suffer from ignorance, poor mental health, horrible circumstances, short lifespans, and poor health. I will set free those who are not free. I will give relief to those who have no relief. I will liberate from suffering those who are not liberated from suffering.
Thank you, Catherine. Very nice. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it almost sounds like he's describing the United States of America right now, right? People who are not free, horrible circumstances, poor health, poor mental health, right? Lots of things are kind of relatable in this little passage here. But of course, that's not all that he's talking about. What is he talking about? What's going on in this scene? I guess, first of all, where is he when he says this? And of course, Catherine could answer that, but she doesn't have to because she already participated. She read the passage. So where is he? Where is he when he makes this declaration, right? He's saying all the things he's going to do. Where is he when he makes this declaration?
Is he in heaven?
He is in heaven. Yeah. So again, if you've got your book open, you can see this. I'm sure that's what Sam is looking at. On page 10, it says right there, he's in Tushita heaven. And you don't have to know what Tushita means, but he is a God up in heaven during this life, right? During his life before his final life, he's looking down at all the beings. He's seeing them suffer, right? And so if you feel like you are uniquely suffering with feeling trapped and having poor health and all that sort of stuff, you are not alone, right? The Buddha has been observing these suffering beings long ago, and he's reflecting on it just like we are suffering now. So there's nothing new with all of this suffering. And this language of refuge, maybe you remember refuge. You guys remember that? We talked about going for refuge. And so he's looking at this world, he's seeing all these people who need help and they have nowhere to go. And so he's saying, I'm going to help them out, right? I'm going to come down. I'm going to set free those who are not free. I'll give relief to those who have no relief. I will liberate from suffering those who are not liberated from suffering. And this last line in particular, maybe I'll even paste it in the chat, is really kind of encapsulates the entire Buddhist mission, is liberation from suffering, right? He sees all this suffering and he thinks, I'm going to help them all out. And of course, this whole scene gets left out of the life story of the Buddha. But once we take him being born within the context of this larger vow that he is making, and of course, this is a vow, V-O-W, then even his birth becomes all the more remarkable, right? And the sort of spectacular characteristics of his birth start to make more sense. He's coming to help people, and so there are certain signs that come along with his arrival. Maybe let's talk about vows real quick. Why do people take vows or make vows? Why do people make vows or take vows?
Is it like to make a solid promise about something that they're going to do or like plan to do?
Yeah, it's like a promise. And did you say solemn? I like that word, solemn promise. Yeah, exactly. And so the Buddha is promising that he's going to do these things. He's not saying this like, yeah, maybe I'll do that if I have some time, maybe, kind of, sort of. He is committing himself to this activity, right? Can you think of a very common example where people make these sorts of promises?
Marriage.
Marriage, yeah, exactly. So why do people, well, I guess first of all, what are marriage vows? People say what, like in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, till death do us part, that sort of thing. And it's become so like, with rote, do you guys know this word? R-O-T-E. It's become so common to say this sort of phrase that it almost loses its meaning, right? So why do people make those vows when they get married? What's the point of saying, that I'll stay with you for richer, for poorer, in sickness and health? What does that do for a relationship? I know this is maybe a difficult question to ask at 8 a.m. with your Buddhism teacher, but I think it's actually quite relevant here. What does it do? Let's say you get married and you make this promise to somebody, these kind of standard wedding vows. Well, maybe you don't want to get there with me, so I'll just walk you through it. What happens when, let's say I get married, I make these wedding vows, I make a commitment to my wife, and then all of a sudden she gets sick and she's not as attractive as she used to be, and it actually is going to be very expensive to take care of her. It might be a little easier for me to just kind of walk away, wouldn't it? Be like, actually, I'm kind of busy these days. I got class to teach and I got some bills to pay. It would be nice if you weren't sick. I don't want you to be sick, but now that you're sick, it's kind of inconvenient for me, so I'm out, right? So how does a vow affect a relationship? How does a vow, I don't know, how does a vow help people get through these times? What does the vow have to do with this whole situation? Nothing. Well, and if we compare it to the life of the Buddha, there's something very similar, right? Just like at the beginning of a relationship, there's a lot of excitement. He's sort of making this commitment to be a savior. He's like, yes, I'm going to go and help all these people. He might not know what it means to help people yet, right? Is it easy to help people? Is it easy to liberate people from suffering? Is that an easy task? Can you get it done in like
No.
an hour-long TV show span? Is that possible? I know a lot of TV
No.
shows solve their problems in like an hour, but yeah, as Sydney's saying, no, of course not, right? It's actually very difficult to set people free, to give them relief, to liberate them from suffering. I'm sure a lot of you have thought about these things, right? Maybe that's why you're in this class, is because you want to help liberate beings from suffering too. But when you really think about it, how do you do that? It is not such an easy task, right? And so this vow will help move him along through these difficult times. And I only make the comparison to marriage. I'm sure this is maybe something that you guys are still figuring out, but I make the comparison to marriage is because the strength comes from this commitment, right? You make this commitment at the beginning. You say, hey, I'm going to be there for you. You're going to be there for me, right? The Buddha, he doesn't even ask anybody to be there for him. He's just saying, I'm going to do this thing. And from the strength of this vow, he can continue on this path, even when the times get a little bit tough. Okay, maybe that's enough of that on vows and this sort of thing. Here's the elephant scene. Maybe you remember his mother was kind of dancing with an elephant in a dream. That was sort of a strange part of the Hollywood version. But as you can see here, it's a very old image, right? Like almost 2,000 years ago. Here's a depiction of the elephant entering into his mother's womb. I'm not sure if this is significant, but he seems to be entering into her side, which I suppose makes sense. That's where he comes out of as well. And there are a whole bunch of crazy things that happen. I think we already talked about this a little bit, but this image of the elephant, I think, is kind of a fascinating one. And as we read the story, we can find that same image come up too. There's this whole thing about a sandalwood palace that he lives inside. Do you guys know what sandalwood is? Have you ever smelled sandalwood?
I feel like it has something to do with incense, like an incense holder.
Yeah, sandalwood. Let's look it up. It smells great. You know, unfortunately, we don't have smell-o-vision, so I can't give you the flavor, but maybe you can get a sense of it just from seeing it. It is a type of wood, but it's a wood with this, let's say, essential oil inside of it that smells amazing. And so, yeah, I didn't catch who just said that, but it is basically an incense. You can make an incense out of sandalwood. You can make other things too, but it smells unbelievable. And so as we think about this image of him inside of his womb, why is he in the sandalwood palace? It comes back to this question of purity and impurity. You know, we talked about the lotus flower coming out of the murky water and being this pure blossom, unaffected by its murky beginnings. There's something very similar happening here, where, you know, when I was in the womb, I was covered in like goo and amniotic fluid and whatever mucousy kind of stuff, and blood, of course, and all that kind of stuff. And he is, like we said, fully dressed and smelling of sandalwood. So he's a special guy. All right, so I think maybe that's enough of that. One thing to keep in mind is his mother dies, and he's actually raised by his aunt. We'll talk about her again, actually. She becomes the first nun, so she's a very important figure. But his mother dies shortly after he was born. And as you can see, the book kind of protests a little too much. It's like, and by the way, the Bodhisattva was not the cause of her death. So, you know, one could imagine a version of this story where that is not the case, but they make a pretty strong statement that it was not his fault. And then finally, this is, again, a little bit by way of review. We didn't quite talk about these yet. There's a prophecy. Did we talk about the prophecy last time? Did we get to this yet?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. So there's a prophecy. And so the Buddha is born. It's sort of like almost like astrology, that sort of thing. You know, like I was born January 7th. I'm a Capricorn, and I'm sure you guys know your sign. I feel like astrology has kind of made a comeback in recent years. And so there's something very similar happening here, where these wise men get invited out to kind of read the stars and read the signs of this young prince's birth. And he basically makes a prediction. There are two things that could happen. He could become a wheel-turning king, which might sound like a sort of a weird phrase, but this idea of a wheel, it implies that he conquers the world. You know, we could call him a universal king, universal monarch, universal emperor, or he could become the transcendent one. Now, of course, we know what happened, right? Because the whole reason we are telling his story is he did become the transcendent one. But if we think about this, when he's a little baby, his parents just had him. His father is a king himself, right? So which one do you think his father wants him to be when he hears this prediction? Which fate would he prefer?
Probably if he became a king.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It's almost like, you know, if your parents are rich bankers and you're like, hey, mom and dad, you know, somebody made a prediction that if I stay at home, I'll become a rich banker, and if I go to Manhattan College and take a Buddhism class, I will become some religious hippie. You know, your parents would try to keep you home if they heard that prediction, right? There's something very similar happening here. And of course, this language of staying at home or leaving home really is at the core of this prediction. It's almost like a Greek tragedy or something. Because of this prediction, the father really tries to shelter his son, keep him at home, keep him comfortable, right? And again, this is maybe not so far from our own experience. Keep him sheltered from the suffering of the world, keep him away from bad, dangerous situations, keep him away from all the different pains of the world. And as a result, the hope is that he'll stay at home and become this powerful king. There are a bunch of other prophecies too, but we don't have to worry about them. This is the main one, right? Is that there are two options for this kid, and the father wants him to be a king. So he really kind of goes all in on that. So any questions so far? That's kind of a review of the birth and everything around the birth. A few of the pieces we didn't cover last time. Anything you guys want to discuss further there? Okay, so now we're getting into his final life. We can kind of zoom through these first few parts. As we talked about before, there are 12 major acts that organize the chapters of this book. And so we're getting up through chapter 4, chapter 5. It's his life as a young man. And again, if we can compare this story to the life story of Jesus kind of disappears when he's a young man. I don't know the life story of Jesus as well as I do the life story of the Buddha, but my understanding is, you know, you've got baby Jesus and then you've got like young adult Jesus, but in between, it's actually kind of unclear, right? There aren't a lot of accounts of him as a young man who's growing up. And one reason for that I would offer is there's a bit of a contradiction here, right? Just like Jesus, the Buddha is kind of this perfect human, a divine human, we could say almost. And when you are a perfect human, it's all fine and good when you're an adult, right? Because you're doing all sorts of perfect things. And even as a baby, you can have this spectacular birth. But in between is sort of awkward. Because what do you do when you're a kid? Is you struggle, you fail, you learn, you grow, right? You make mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. And so this process of learning, right? To have someone who is omniscient, who has to learn, there's a bit of a contradiction there. Do you see the contradiction? I guess, first of all, what does omniscient mean? Do you guys know this word omniscient?
I guess it's like all powerful, all knowing.
It's one of the two. Here's the other one, omnipotent. So which one is omniscient? Is it all powerful or all knowing?
All knowing.
Yes, good. So all knowing, it comes from the Latin roots, scio, scira, right? Which means to know. Omni means everything. Potent, you probably know potent already, is all powerful. So those are good words to know, right? The Buddha is, I guess I'll form this as a question. Is the Buddha, well, let's start with this one. Is the Buddha omniscient? Yes, I already told you that. Is the Buddha omnipotent? Is he all powerful?
No.
He is not. Why do you say not, Sydney? I agree with you, but what's your reasoning there?
Because I feel like omnipotent, you kind of have to like, kind of have to be above being human, and like, yeah, he had a prophecy and everything, but he is still like a human person who goes on a journey to become the Buddha, so he wouldn't be omnipotent.
Yeah, very good. And this is one of the big differences between God with a capital G versus Buddha. God is omnipotent, right? He's the creator. He can do whatever he wants. And so it actually creates a lot of problems for Christianity, because how can an all-loving, all-powerful God allow evil to exist in this world, right? And you can come up with ways to explain that, but people have to explain that. That becomes a problem. With the Buddha, if he were omnipotent, he would just get rid of all the suffering in the world, right? He'd just sort of snap his fingers and, the problems would be over. But as we can tell from this vow that he's taking, there's not anything he can do to help them, at least not from the distance of heaven, right? He has this wish to help free beings from suffering. It's not his fault that they are suffering. It's not his making. It's not his idea. It's just something that's happening. And he's going to do what he can to try to help them out. So again, when we come back to this, if we have this omniscient being who is very special and is trying to come down to help everybody, there's a bit of a contradiction that he would then have to learn, and he would have to struggle, and he would fail. How do they solve this problem? How does this story that we're reading, how does the author of this story resolve this contradiction? In other words, why does the Buddha, for example, go to school? Why does the omniscient one have to go to school? Are any of you omniscient? Why are you going to school? Why does the omniscient one have to go to school?
Because like he still kind of has to learn, because again, he's not omnipotent, so he still has to learn and create like the base of knowledge.
Well, but he's all-knowing. So, I mean, there's a very real sense that he's not necessarily there to learn his times tables or something like that, right? There's a sense that he already knows all of these things. So yeah, there's not an obvious answer here. He's not going to school to, to learn history or math or whatever. And yet, at the same time, from one perspective, he's a human who's just like everybody else. From another perspective, he is this omniscient being. And so again, this is the contradiction that we're playing with. Why don't we look at it if we feel a little stumped about it? Any last ideas? Why would you go to school if you already know everything? So the omniscient one is learning, right? He goes, he talks to his teacher, 27, 28. We don't have to look at all the details of this. Again, it's a bit of an awkward exchange, and it's a little strange, which is why I'm highlighting it. He shows up and he's like, "Hey, teacher, what are you going to teach me? The Brahmi script, Kharoshti script, the Lotus Heart script." And I guess to get the point of this conversation, you'll have to know what a script is. So what's a script? I've given you an example of the Brahmi script here. This would be Roman script, and they're saying the same thing. So what is a script?
Like the alphabet, or
Like the
letters,
alphabet.
or...
Yeah, exactly. It's a way of writing. And I know this is getting a little technical, but a script is actually distinct from a language, right? So Shakyamuni is the name of the Buddha. I know I've hit you with way too many names already, but let's see, did I give you? Yeah, so his name when he was a prince is Siddhartha. That's one thing I've been calling him in the slides. We've already seen Bodhisattva. He is a Buddha, but he's not the only Buddha. And so people call him Shakyamuni Buddha. So just, I know it's a little overwhelming, but he's a man of many names. What can we say? So yeah, the word Shakyamuni is a Sanskrit word, but it can be written in many different scripts, right? Even within India, there are many different ways of writing. In Europe, I feel like it was standardized pretty early. I mean, like it must have been Roman Empire, but you've probably seen the Greek alphabet, for example. So that would be another script, right? You could write Greek words in English. You could write, Zeus or whatever. So that's a Greek name. You could also write Zeus in Greek, in the Greek alphabet, which would be another script. And so here's young Siddhartha learning these different alphabets, and he's talking about scripts. This Lotus Heart script doesn't even exist, or at least I've never heard of it before, and the teacher's never heard of it before. And so there's this sort of bizarre moment where the student is teaching the teacher, right? And perhaps we shouldn't be surprised by that if he's being born out of his mother's side and all that sort of thing. And so from this scene, what can we say? Why is he going to school if he's not there to learn? Why is he going to school?
I think he's going to school to like help others learn and help enlighten others.
Yeah, exactly. He's there to teach, right? It's sort of a bizarre twist. He's still the student, but he's there to teach. And so it goes to show, right? This task that seems like it's pretty straightforward. You guys are here to learn. You're here to learn the life story of the Buddha, learn about meditation, learn about various Buddhist ideas. But on the other hand, you could also come to help people, right? So on like page 28, we even see at the end of their exchange, at this very moment, 32,000 people were brought to complete enlightenment. And this is the reason that the Bodhisattva entered grammar school. So, I mean, this phrase here, right, it's kind of answering the question that goes unasked, but that I am trying to tease out with you, is why would he ever go to school? If he already knows everything, why would he go to school? And so just like, who just answered, I think it was Brielle, just like Brielle just said, he is there to help people, right? And so even if it's not for himself, right, he can use his compassionate motivation to help people, to help liberate them. Because again, that's what he's there to do in the first place, right? Is to try to help people. And so as readers, we can begin to rethink our own aspects, right? Our own kind of approaches to education, our approaches to being a student, and realize that being a student doesn't have to only be for us, right? It can be for everybody else too. Okay, questions about that? It's sort of a weird question. It's like, why would this all-knowing person go to school? But hopefully, is it clear now why he's going to school? There's a similar issue with marriage, right? He's the desireless one. I'm not sure if it says desireless one, but I thought that was sort of a nice way to put it. He's somebody who has overcome his desires, overcome his attraction to women. Why would he ever get married? And he explains it, right? He said, people before me have taught through wives and sons and servants, not controlled by lust, good thoughts, not rent apart, so shall I teach according to their ways. And so he's basically saying, this is what people have done in the past. This is what people do now. I'll do it too, right? And so there's a sense that he can do this and do it well, and he has a good motivation. And by getting married, he can show people how to be a good husband. By being a father, he can show people how to be a good father. By being a master of servants, he can show people how to be a good master of servants, right? He's not doing it because he wants to necessarily, right? He's doing it to sort of teach the world how to do it. Now, one thing you can keep in mind is this could be a slippery slope, right? You could say, oh, I'm just keeping servants to show the world how to be a good master of servants, but you're still keeping somebody in servitude, even when you're claiming that you're there to set them free. So there's a little bit of, a danger here, let's say. So again, this contradiction really runs throughout the story. We could imagine there's almost just like two layers that sort of work together, but whenever he makes mistakes, whenever he fails, whenever he learns from his mistakes, he feels a bit more human. And whenever he, teaches people and causes their enlightenment, he feels a bit more omniscient. And yet they're both operating at the same time. So yeah, questions about these chapters, about this part of his life? Okay, so here's the main part that I wanted to talk about today, the 4 sights. So this is a major climax of the story. Again, if we want to find it in the book, it's page 39 of the physical copy. It's chapter 6. If you're following along in an ebook, chapter 6, the renunciation, right? And so maybe you can tell from that title that something big is happening here. So I guess first of all, what does renunciation mean? Just so we're on the same page. Renunciation is the name of the chapter. Comes from the word renounce. Is that word familiar to you guys? What does it mean to renounce something? Nothing?
It means to like kind of withdraw yourself and like push back from certain like ideals or values.
Yeah, I like that. So you're withdrawing yourself, you're pushing things away. Yeah, there's a very sort of spatial image to that explanation, but I like it a lot. So the Buddha is renouncing something. We haven't quite learned what he's renouncing yet, but you know, he's a prince, and so he is renouncing his position as a prince. And so we'll have to see how this all plays out. So here's what I want to do now. Let's watch this clip and we can do a little conversation afterward. Maybe rather than doing it as a group, I'm gonna bounce you guys off to smaller groups. I'll put these questions in the chat now. But yeah, so he's gonna have these 4 sites. They're not all gonna be in the clip, so you're gonna have to find them in the book. I give you the page number there. So what are the 4 sites? What do they have in common? That's kind of a harder question, right? The first one is just, can you find the information? But what is their relationship with each other? How does it affect him? One of them, I already tell you here, is a holy person. Why is that one included? And why is a poor person not included in the 4 sites? Because there's a temptation to think that this should be in that list, and yet it is not. So that's another thing we should think about. Okay, so let's watch the clip and then we can have a little discussion before we finish class today. Time is moving quickly. All right, let me do the settings real quick, make sure I'm sharing sound optimized. Oh, I'm gonna pause the recorder. Again, so how were your conversations?
My groups was really good, and like I think Colin, he brought up a really good point. Like kind of, he's the omniscient one. How did he not know about like sickness, death, and like old people? He's supposed to be like all knowing. It's like one point that we made.
You kind of trailed off there at the end, shouldn't you? Maybe you.
Oh yeah, that was just like
cut off.
one. Yeah, that was just like, sorry, that was like my computer. That's just like one point that we made talking about the 4 sites, was that like how it is a weird effect that he is supposed to be omniscient and like teaching his teachers, but doesn't know like the basic parts of life, which are like death, illness, age. So that's kind of a weird kind of almost paradox of being all knowing, except not knowing like specific parts of life, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And yeah, that was like a main point that we had that I thought was really interesting.
Were you able to figure it out? Do you have an answer to the question of like, yeah, how does he know everything, and how does he not know about old people, right? Were you able to come up with an answer to that?
That, like, I feel like it is kind of like not answered in the book, but it is like kind of his life story, how he was never exposed to it. Even though he is like the all-knowing one, it's just not a part of his physical life. It's kind of an answer to it, but we didn't really like, there's kind of like a comment made as opposed to like one that we kind of thought that long on, but like that could be an aspect to it, that it was just isn't something that he's ever even seen or heard of, so it can't be something he knows because it's not in his like realm.
Yeah, well, and I'm happy that you brought this up, because it shows that this story kind of is operating on at least 2 levels at all times, right? So on the one hand, in the movie clip, it's exactly what it seems to be, right? He's just an ignorant young prince who has never seen an old person before, right? And that's pretty clear. He's just a struggling human who's never seen an old person before. In the book, they take it another step, and they kind of highlight that other side of the Buddha. Did anybody pick it up on page 39, which again is this page I was pointing to before? it kind of answers this question. Did anybody see this part that I'm thinking of here? I'll give you a minute to look for it. So he's going through the royal gates, just like in the movie. And then he's with the charioteer. They're going through. Nothing is displeasing. And so again, the king wants everything to be pleasant, right? Just like Sydney was saying, the king is trying to shelter his son from everything unpleasant in the world. And so again, I'm reading from 39. And yet the Bodhisattva left through the eastern gate. He beheld a man afflicted with the pains of aging. This man was in fact an emanation produced by the gods through the power of the Bodhisattva himself. Now that line feels a little like a throwaway. It's not like a major point of the story, and yet I think it does kind of answer this question. I'll even write some of the key terms in the chat. It says he's an emanation. The old person was an emanation. What is an emanation? It comes from emanate.
Is it almost like a hologram?
It's almost like a hologram. Yeah, exactly. So we have like a magic trick happening where the old person is an emanation produced by the gods, but it's coming through the power of the prince, right? So again, it doesn't totally make sense. You know, the easier reading is that he's just a human who is learning and who has never seen an old person before. And yet here, it seems like he's almost behind the whole scene to begin with, right? And as a reader, as we see these two different levels of the story operating, we're left wondering why. And again, it's just like when he was a student, right? It's for us. It's for us to learn, right? We are here to learn from his experiences. And so we're left with the question, which is maybe something you guys talked about. What does this story do to us as a reader, right? As Keanu Reeves is discovering old age for the first time, I would argue it's here for us to see old age with new eyes, right? This is something we kind of started to talk about in one of my groups, is to think about what does it really mean to get old, right? Rather than like, oh yeah, that's his grandma. She's very different than I am, right? She's old and I am young. All of a sudden, Keanu Reeves, Siddhartha, is collapsing that distance between him and the old person, right? And the end result is he's thinking, I will be old one day. And maybe you guys like already know that, right? Of course you already know that in some sense of the word. But I think what this story is trying to tell you is actually, no, you don't. No, you don't, right? One day your hair will turn a weird color, your skin will get all wrinkly, your teeth will fall out, right? That was one of the real remarkable things about the movie is you have this sort of jolly looking old guy with his teeth falling out, he's all crooked and his bones hurt and all that sort of stuff. And of course, beyond that, you've got sickness. Sickness is pretty real right now, death. And even though it is so real, sickness and death is all around us, we still have major members of our society, a relatively large population of people in our society who are able to ignore these things, right? And say, not real, right? Sickness isn't real. It's not going to come for me. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to be young and beautiful forever, right? But of course, these are delusions, right? And I don't mean to point a finger at such people and say that they are so different from me. I wake up in the morning and think, yep, young and beautiful and handsome, and I'll just be healthy and happy for the rest of my life. We've got the syllabus. I've told you what's going to happen. In week 6, we'll have an exam. Who knows if we'll even be alive by week 6, right? You really don't know. And so it's a little bit of a reminder, right, that these old age, sickness, and death, they're out there and they're waiting for us. Okay, any other reflections? Anybody else want to talk about their discussions? What about the holy person, poor person thing? Holy person, poor person. Please.
So I was in my group, and I brought up the point about because like I don't know if this is jumping ahead, but I was saying about how I'm pretty sure it was after the holy person that the Buddha actually dropped all his stuff and finally left. But obviously, like if most holy people, like you could follow religion and like technically be considered holy, but most holy people are like, like wise and like knowledgeable. So like, and I'm pretty sure because I've studied this before, I'm pretty sure that the holy person was just like, like a happy guy with no possessions. So I'm pretty sure it was the holy person was included so that the Buddha could see, you don't have to be happy with all this material as a prince. So dropping all his stuff, and then that's when like I'm pretty sure he finally like went out and like actually like started to become enlightened.
Excellent. So Rory's saying the holy person is a poor person, and he's right. Yeah, because this is exactly where the story goes. Exactly. I think we're tempted to think about being poor as a cause of suffering because there's a message and assumption that if you have enough money, you can stay away from death, you can stay away from disease, you can stay away from old age, you can get Botox, you can get surgery, and it's kind of true, right? If you have money, you can fix a lot of problems that would have killed people a long time ago. And yet, what the Buddha does is he gives up all of his money, right? He gives up his status as a prince. And we've only got 5 minutes, but why don't we start looking at that? So I think we've gone over the 4 sites very well. Siddhartha, just like Rory introduced to us, is saying he wants no aging, no sickness, no death, no decay. So what does he do? He leaves home, right? The father says, hey, stay at home and I'll give you anything you want. And Siddhartha says, you can't give me what I want, right? I want an end to suffering. And so he has to leave home. In this image here, it's from a Southeast Asian tradition. He has a wife and a child, right? He's already a father. In the version of the story we're reading, his wife is actually pregnant. And so it's another slight shift in emphasis, slight shift in detail. But it actually leads to a very, I would argue, a significant point. So that's something we can return to later. But here is the prince leaving his wife and child and friends and everybody else, and he's getting the hell out. So in the last 5 minutes, let's just talk a little bit about asceticism. So when he leaves his life as a prince, he starts to lead a very disciplined life, a life full of discipline and a lack of indulgence. And so if we compare these 2 phases of his life, when he was a prince, he was having a great time, he was having nice drinks, he had lots of friends, lots of songs, lots of wonderful experiences. Now he's going to live this life as an ascetic, and I have a video to illustrate that, but there's no time to watch it. He's trying to lead just the opposite, right? Something, a life that is full of discipline and full of hardship, but it's hardship that he's introducing to himself, right? What's the point? What's he trying to achieve, right? What's he trying to achieve by sitting under this tree and meditating? And as you can see, starving himself to death, right? His ribs are starting to stick out. His face is he's losing the flesh. He's losing his jowls and that sort of thing. Why is he doing this? What's the point?
He's kind of like
asceticism? Go ahead.
This is his I guess like method of being like a renunciate, of renouncing society, and that instead of like watching or contributing to suffering, he's kind of self-inducing it.
Yeah. So we talked about renouncing his status as a prince. We talked about renouncing wealth and all of these other pursuits. And here it looks like he's even renounced things like food and very basic comforts that, I think many of us turn to when we need some kind of comfort. So he's leading like this really hardcore life. Do you guys, can you relate to this at all? Do you guys ever develop discipline in order to try to pursue your goals? Is that a part of your life?
I think delayed gratification is a huge part of everyone's life.
Delayed gratification. Sorry, I didn't actually see who said that, but that's a great way to put it. Was it Adam? No, I don't think it was Adam. Who said that?
It was Brendan.
Brendan. Okay, yeah, very good. Delayed gratification. So maybe you've heard of these exercises where little babies are put in a room and they're like given a marshmallow, and the experiment person says, "Now don't eat that marshmallow. If you come back, I'll give you an even better prize." And they leave the kid in the room with the marshmallow for like 10 minutes. You guys ever heard of this before? Does that ring a bell? Maybe you haven't heard of it. I couldn't tell you exactly who did this study, but it's a psychological study. And basically the point is the children who are able to sort of follow directions, not eat the marshmallow, wait for 10 minutes to get the bigger prize, they tend to do better in life, in society. They are able to think about that future goal and maybe suffer a little bit now and go through the hardships of not eating that marshmallow. Whereas the child who just eats the marshmallow tends to do worse in American society. And I would argue that a big reason for that is that's sort of how our society is structured, right? There are a lot of these traps you can fall into where it's like, oh yeah, take out a credit card, run it up till it's max, and you'll have a great time. Lease a car, you won't own it, but you can drive it and you look real cool, right? It's going to cost a ton of money. Then you got to get rid of it. Even buying toilet paper, right? It's like buy one roll at a time. It's like $1.50. Buy like a whole case of them, and it's like, cents on the dollar. And so this idea of delayed gratification is really at the core of American society. And we see in the life of the Buddha, there's something kind of similar happening too, right? If you develop this discipline to be able to put off gratification to a later date, then perhaps you'll be able to find what you're looking for. Although we see here, he makes the statement, this too will not lead to liberation from suffering. So he's not quite there yet. And now we are out of time. So we're not there yet either, and that's okay. So we'll get there next time. So any last questions or comments before we call it a day? We all good? All right, so good class. That was fun. We'll pick up where we left off next time. Keep reading. Have a good weekend. And now it looks like the sun is maybe almost coming out. So if you do have in-person class, be careful on the ice. And I'll see you guys next time.